Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Diversity Opens Doors. My name is Kathleen Bretthauer and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. This presentation will last approximately 60 minutes. During the live webinar, you can type your questions in the chat box on the bottom or top of your screen throughout the session, and we will address them during the Q&A time at the end of the session. To earn education credit for completing this webinar, participants on the live webinar will have access to the survey at the end of the session. For those of you on our on-demand session, please make sure you keep the webinar launch page open in the background. Once this webinar has concluded, you will want to return to that page to complete the online education survey for credit. Please note our handouts are available on the same session launch page in the Handouts and Resources tab. And with that, it's now my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Kathy Chang. Kathy is president of WS & Company, one of Canada's leading full-service apparel manufacturers and the founder of its in-stock promotional apparel line, Redwood Classics Apparel. In addition to producing past Olympic apparel programs, Chang's high-quality apparel can be found at upscale, internationally renowned retailers across North America. With a growing presence in Japan and Europe, WS & Co. has combated offshore competition, putting Canada on the map as a leading destination for premium apparel manufacturing. Chang has been named as an honoree of Inc. magazine's Female Founders 100 for 2020. A longtime champion of North American manufacturing, in 2016, Chang received 2 honors that recognized and celebrated this fact. She was selected as a Supplier Woman of Distinction by the Advertising Specialty Institute and named to the MBE's Who Rock list by Minority Business Entrepreneur magazine. The recipients of CAMSC's 2015 Supplier of the Year Award, Chang was also one of 3 candidates introduced into the 2014 EY Entrepreneurial Winning Women program. In 2013, she was named as one of Canada's most powerful women, Top 100 award winners. And finally, Chang focuses on paying it forward to the next generation of Canadian designers with her role as mentor and a member of the board of directors for Toronto Fashion Incubator. Without further delay, I give you Kathy.
Thank you, Kathleen. Hello, everyone. So I'm going to just start off by saying I am owning up to it and I'm very nervous. I don't know. I've been told I shouldn't tell people that, but I am, and I'd rather be honest. It's my first time doing a live webinar, so please bear with me. As Kathleen had mentioned, we will do Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, please put it in the chat box. So here we are doing Diversity Open Doors and why I believe diversity will help you sell to major Fortune 500s. I mean, first off, if you think about it, the year 2020 has indeed been a very, very memorable year. In addition to a global pandemic and causing economic disruptions and events, there's been some surrounding racial injustice. And it really has disrupted our everyday lives in terms of how we interact with each other, how we work together, and sincerely how we engage with our customers and our suppliers. So as we bid goodbye to 2020, and for some of us, I think we're all saying good riddance, I think we really need to start focusing and building the future. And I believe diversity will lead a sustainable promotional product industry for all of us. So allow me to just jump right into talking about the word diversity. Diversity is a really, really big word. And the concept of diversity is that it is all-encompassing and there's acceptance and there's respect for one another. So regardless if you're a distributor, you're a supplier, or if you're a service provider in the industry, if you could, I'd appreciate it if you can type in yes into the chat room. If, number one, if you have ever sold ad specialty items to a woman, a person of color, a person within the LGBTQ plus community, a veteran, or a person with disabilities. So, awesome. Now, my second question to each of you is, please type in yes in the chat room if you work with a woman, a person of color, a person within the LGBTQ plus community, a veteran, or a person with disabilities. So on my screen, I'm seeing some flashes. So I'm assuming I'm getting some yeses here, which is great. And lastly, my last question is, please type in yes in the chat room if you have a business friend or an associate who is a woman, a person of color, a person within the LGBTQ plus community, a veteran, or a person with disabilities. So I see that many of us do. And since we've answered yes to any, if you've answered yes to any of the three questions I've just asked, then I believe you have diversity in your everyday life. And in this webinar, what we're going to explore are ways in which you can sell more promo products to major corporations and especially to Fortune 500 companies, because diversity is here and it's here to stay. And as an industry, we need to embrace it and we need to address it. Now, often when referring to the term diversity in the business settings, there are actually two types of corporate mandates. The first one being diversity and inclusion and supplier diversity. Today, I actually really want to focus on supplier diversity. So I'm going to speak about it on a very high level. If there's interest, we can talk about it some more. But I just think it's a term that we don't use often in this industry. And I really think there's opportunities for all of us to be strategic in how we can be strategic in our sourcing to then, as an industry, grow and sell into Fortune 500 companies, including 80% of America's corporations actually have an implementation of a supplier diversity strategy within their business. So going back to the difference between diversity and inclusion and supplier diversity, diversity and inclusion is typically an internal program within a corporations. So if anybody can type in yes, if you've heard of the word diversity and inclusion, that'd be great. And no, never heard of the term diversity inclusion? Okay, there we go. And if you've heard of the term supplier diversity? Anybody heard of supplier diversity? Okay. So again, I'm just going to repeat. Diversity and inclusion is typically housed and is an internal program that is housed within human resources, whereas supplier diversity is typically housed within procurement, within the organization. And so what I mean by that is diversity and inclusion, we're focusing in the people within your company. And then external is the supplier diversity, looking within your supply chain and trying to identify and strategically find diverse thinking, diversity within that. And the reason why I'm showing this slide is that often we hear the term diversity and inclusion, which is great for your own business and looking at the internal strategy. But then from a procurement standpoint and how you can bring value to your customer is through supplier diversity. And through this slide, you'll see that actually with the Google Trend search, you'll see that a lot of people search more diversity and inclusion than supplier diversity. And in the context of selling, I'd like to explore the term supplier diversity because I think it's been underutilized in our industry, especially in our industry. So really, what is supplier diversity and why does supplier diversity matter? I think it was pre-pandemic, our promo industry is $26 billion industry. And I believe in order for us to further thrive and grow, our industry needs diversity on the external side as well. I believe there's a need to diversify the knowledge base, to foster innovation, and to break the status quo. And if there's a lack of diverse thinking within our industry, I believe it's also a barrier to innovation. Now, there's been a lot of consolidations in our industry, right? We all know this. Every turn we go, there's consolidation. So when there's so much consolidation, when you embrace diversity, I believe is going to be one of the key ways that we're able to key ways that we're going to have a sustainable promotional product industry of the future. Because when you have consolidation, typically those within the consolidation are thinking the same way. It's the same company culture or within your supply chain. So with supplier diversity, what we're trying to do is look at the external sources of your organization. So what is supplier diversity? It's a very highly intentional business process to offer equal access to procurement opportunities within your organization. So, I know what's very, very popular in our industry is that you have preferred suppliers. Great, you have preferred suppliers. But how about the niche suppliers? How about the suppliers that a large supplier may not be a specialty in? In my humble opinion, I think there's a lot of generalists in our industry, and we could probably level up the number of specialists we have in our industry. And I say that with all due respect, but we're also very habitual in this industry. You always go to the same supplier, same old, same old, same old. Why? Because it's easy. So what I'm doing is asking each of you, and I'm challenging each of you to be able to be more innovative and to bring differences to your client. I remember going to trade shows back in the day, right? Hopefully we'll be doing that again very soon. But when you're at a trade show as a supplier, often what I get asked is, what do you have that's new? New. Well, if you're going to the same person, same product, how is it ever new? So that's part of that diversity. Distributors will come to suppliers and ask, what's new? So we do that daily already. And with that, so if we just strategically and intentionally seek out suppliers that are a reflection of your company's diversity, your company's base, your customer base, and your workforce, I believe that we can better serve them. Because at the heart of it, there's a solid business case for supplier diversity and leveraging diverse-owned businesses. As I'd mentioned before, supplier diversity is actually practiced in 80% of America's corporations. And often there are actually formalized programs that typically have diverse spend goals, meaning the corporations aim and are strategically targeting diverse certified businesses to try to roll them into their supply chain. And again, why do they want them in the supply chain? Is because you want diverse thoughts, you want differences, you want to hear different perspectives. So then you'll ask me, perhaps you're wondering, how do you become a diverse certified business? Well, there's a few things that's really important, which is the business type. So first of all, you have to be a for-profit, meaning it's not a charity. You're not a charity, but you're a for-profit business that's incorporated in the area. And in the case in the USA, you would be incorporated in the USA. For us, myself in Canada, I'd be incorporated in Canada. Also, the business structure, the business control. The business control and ownership needs to be at least 51% owned and operated and controlled by any of the considered diverse groups. If you recall, what did I start off asking you guys questions on? If you sell to a woman, a person of color, a member of the LGBTQ plus community, a veteran, or persons with disabilities. If you are any of those categories, that is what you're considered as a diverse. So the business must be owned by them. And also what you're also going to find is that the ownership is verified through councils. Some of these councils are, let's say, WeBank and MSDC. In the US, we have NGLCC or any other recognized certifying bodies. Now, you may ask, well, how do I know if that corporation is going to recognize that certification? I think we're all in business, like if you're sales, you're looking at business development. Often I would recommend people to go on the corporation's website. If there's a section on diversity, especially if there's a section on supplier diversity, you're able to see what certifications that they will accept as a diverse business. Now, I don't know if any of these logos look familiar to you. What I'm showing here is in the US, you have WeBank, which is women owned. And so that is the certifying body. So WeBank is women owned. NGLCC is for the LGBTQ plus community to have that certification. NMSDC is actually for persons of color. And then you have NVBDC, which is for veterans. In Canada, we do have councils as well. And I'd like to add actually, supplier diversity originated in the USA in the late 60s. And so there's actually a lot more opportunities for supplier diversity than there are in Canada. Although in Canada, we're starting to catch up. We're often a region as opposed to our own country. So often a number of these Fortune 500 companies, they have global presence, and their global presence is also in Canada. So there is a lot of reciprocal. So my certifications, I am personally, our business is WeBe Canada certified, which is for women-owned business, as well as CAMPC certified, which is for Canadian Aboriginal minority and Canadian Aboriginal supplier, minority and Aboriginal owned. And then there's IWSCC, which has most recently been folded into the mix, which is persons of disabilities. And then there's also CCBA. I know there's a lot of acronyms. I feel like it's just like every other industry, right? You're learning a new acronym and learning a new language. And with CCBA, it's for Aboriginal focused business owners. And then the CGLCC again is the Canadian gay and lesbian for the LGBT community. Now, also, if any of you do global business, there's also opportunities when you are internationally certified. And you'll see some of the organizations. I've actually put the website in and the logo. So if you're interested in learning more, you can. WeConnect is actually a women-owned certifying council. And Redwood Classics is actually WeConnect certified as well. So our certification is actually recognized in 46 global regions. At Redwood, I always say, yes, we're made in Canada. We promote making local. We're very much about acting local, but we think global. So I think about global expansion all the time, and we actually do expand globally. We export more than 50% of our products outside of Canada. And so with that, that's why for us, we felt that being WeConnect certified internationally was a really great certification for us. And then there's the UK certification, MSD UK, and then the MSD China, and then also the SASDC. Sorry, guys, lots of acronyms. I think you guys get the picture. Essentially, if you're certified by any of these organizations on the international front, your certification is recognized in those specific regions. So again, you have access to those. But I do want to clarify something. We spoke about what supplier diversity is. And I did also mention that there are target spends that a number of these corporations have put aside. I wouldn't say put aside. Let me rephrase this. They have a target. They would like to spend their dollars with diverse certified or diverse owned businesses, as within all those categories that I spoke about before. But what supplier diversity is not, it is not a handout. So I just want to make this really, really, really clear. It is not a handout. Getting certified does not mean that there's any guarantee of business. It is not a charity. It is not a quota. It is not a social program. It is a business process. It is a business strategy. And to quote Marty from Accenture, who is the lead in US at Accenture in the US. Yesterday, I was attending one of the conferences, Accenture's own Supplier Diversity Global Conference, and he said a line that I absolutely loved. And he said, "At Accenture, we like brown, we like black, but we love green. Everything is a business case. So there's dollars and cents tied to it. There's a business case for all these corporations to be investing in supplier diversity. Take a look at this. These are all the companies in what we call the billion-dollar roundtable. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it, but look it up. The billion-dollar roundtable, these are all companies and US-based companies that have procured more than $1 billion annually from minority, women-owned businesses, diverse businesses on a tier 1 basis. That means if you're a distributor, they're spending money with you. Tier 1 is a distributor within our our framework of promotional product industry. But again, look at these companies. They spend 1 billion with a B. That's their spending power. And they spend it with diverse certified businesses. And you know what? I also thought maybe I'd share a little video that probably will put all this, wrap all together. And this is actually a video from the billion-dollar roundtable. So just take a look at this.
We are a global provider of technology solutions and products to organizations of many sizes. JP Morgan Chase is a very important customer for SHI. JP Morgan Chase's global supplier diversity programs has helped companies like SHI get into their supplier program and also have an opportunity to compete for the business. We also have working relationships with other minority and women-owned businesses as our suppliers and as our subcontractors.
Hi, I'm Jose Bandujo. I'm the founder of Bandujo Advertising and Design. I started Bandujo in 1993 in my dining room, and we've grown to about 25 people now in New York. When I started in advertising, I realized early on that supplier diversity is really important to a firm like Bandujo, because when you're looking for photographers, market research firms, production companies, you're always looking for individuals that can reflect a very diverse community that we're marketing to.
Probably the most significant contribution you can make to the community is provide jobs for them. You can support knothole baseball teams, child basketball leagues. I personally involved with Mom's Hope here in Cincinnati. Without the people who work for you, you're just not going to grow.
I believe women bring different aspects of leadership, and working with other minority and women-owned businesses really helps SHI become a better company.
I love New York just because of all of the diversity, so many different cultures, and that just exposes us to ideas that I really need in my business as I try to be creative for my clients.
We have a diverse workforce. Everybody's ideas count at Calvary. I think when everyone's contributing, everyone becomes relevant, then you develop community that way.
So hopefully you found that video probably explaining what supplier diversity is, the benefits of it better than I did. However, I mean, lump sum and in a summary, really the benefits of supplier diversity and why I believe it's good for our industry, it really does bring innovation. I mean, you heard about the story about the advertising agency, and it was being creative. How can we be creative? We talk about being creative in our industry all the time. Well, again, when you look, when, you know, you're having supply chain bases or suppliers that are a reflection of the customers that you are selling to. Remember, I asked you, has anybody here sold ad specialty products to a woman, a person of color, a person within the LGBTQ plus community, persons with disability, or to veterans? If you have, don't you want to, and you're, perhaps you yourself may not be when, you know, any of those diverse communities, wouldn't you want to understand them even more and meet their needs? So that's where it brings us to the green part, where it says it mirrors the customer base and attracts new customers. And it really does, because I want to know that my service provider understands what my challenges are. Isn't that what we talk about all the time? How can we be a solutions provider to our client? Well, as you go through and really dig deep into your own supply chain, that's where we're able to foster that. And the truth is, from a procurement standpoint, it really, really enhances competition amongst suppliers. Now, don't tell me you've never put one quote of a supplier against another quote, right? You have to. That is all part of doing good business. And so when you have that, you go into your supply chain yet again, and you're opening up opportunities. And remember, supplier diversity is a business strategy to provide open and equal access opportunities. If you just keep going to the same suppliers time and time again, how do you know you're going to bring in innovation? And I'm going to remind everyone, again, being a diverse certified supplier does not mean I get business just because I'm diverse certified. What it means is now I have an opportunity to put my best foot forward, to put my best service forward, to put my best pricing forward. So we still have to earn the business. Even if you're diverse certified, it's not a given that you will get business. And then also going back to, you know, providing market intelligence by penetrating into targeted diverse markets. Let's be honest, we do have, you know, niche markets that each of us are servicing, and there's a reason why. It's part of a community. So I think, you know, again, that just kind of summarizes some of the benefits of being, you know, the benefits of having this, integrating this this procurement strategy within your own supply chain. Just going to go through this one. And then again, going through market access opportunities, going back to PPAI. I know many of you are based in the US. We probably may have some Canadians on this webinar, maybe, maybe not. I myself am a Canadian, so here we are. And I just want to clarify, you know, the biggest differences right now that's happening in the supplier diversity space is in the US, it's actually a very, very mature market. It was established in the 1960s. And so I would say the US has probably the most mature supplier diversity environment globally. That means you have access, if you're American and you are based in the US and you're servicing your corporations that are based and head offices in the US that maybe have global presence as well, which is many of the Fortune 500s, that you, if you start adopting this and learning more about supplier diversity, you can then add value to your to your end user. In the US, there's actually also government requirements. If you are selling into the government, often they're asking you, you know, if you want to be able to compete in the government space, my understanding in a lot of the RFPs, they're asking you if you are yourself a person of color, if you're a woman, and all of those other diverse categories or communities. And if you're not, that's okay. They want to know if you use suppliers that are also considered diverse. And the reason why they're asking these questions in the RFP is simply because they are looking to you and you as a pass-through as well. No, I wouldn't say pass-through, but knowing that within your supply chain, they're able to bring up the value of diversity so they can fuel more innovation or something more different. And I do want to, again, highlight that if you're in the US, you have so much more market access opportunities in the US. And many of the larger budgets are actually are the ones that are running supplier diversity programs. If anybody's ever been to NMSDC, their annual conference, I got to tell you, the first time I went to any of these conferences in the US, it was mind blowing. I did not expect to see so many Fortune 500 companies. And unlike our industry, where our trade shows are the suppliers that are standing and showing the distributors what all these things are, it's actually the other way around. It is such a beautiful, beautiful space to be in as a supplier. We are being respected. So it's actually the end users, the Fortune 500s that have invested in selling and actually have invested in trying to attract us and in trying to attract suppliers that are actually diverse owned. They're the ones with the trade booth. They're the one that are giving away actually promo products at the trade shows. It's not like when we're, as a supplier, we're standing there. So they're investing a lot of money. And they're investing in a lot of money because they're obviously seeing that there's a business case for it and there's ROI for it. Now, in Canada and internationally, it still is considered very much an emerging market. We're still establishing support systems in Canada and internationally for suppliers. And there really actually is no government requirements. In our RFPs from the government, it doesn't ask you, and especially in Canada, it's a privacy law issue, so they will not be asking us. However, if you're willing to self-identify, I do believe that could be beneficial as well. And there are challenges still in supplier diversity in the Canadian marketplace as well as internationally. So again, this is PPAI. Majority of the membership is based in the US, and I would say there's still so much more market access opportunity. So if there's any international members that are listening, I mean, you know what? Like, why not get on and learn more about it now earlier? So as supplier diversity expands globally, you're prepared and you're ready to go. And go back to beyond corporate responsibility and doing the right thing. Why should we have a diverse supply chain? Again, if you remember, I asked if you've ever engaged with a woman, a person of color, a person within the LGBTQ plus community, a veteran, a person with disabilities in the business environment. And the concept is simple. We are in the people business, right? Don't we talk about that all the time? I'm listening to Promo Kitchen and SKUCon. Common SKU, the podcast. When we talk about our business, we're very much a people person. A people business. We are in the relationship business. And the truth is, people buy from people they like. People buy from people they can relate to. So if you remember the questions I ask you and you have sold to any of these diverse businesses, look at the business opportunity that you have access to if you formalize some strategy in terms of your own procurement. Again, diversity, innovation is applied to innovation can be applied to a diverse supply chain. There's diversity of talent within your supply chain. So let's say I'm a diverse business, and within my business, perhaps I also have diversity within my business. And actually we do. We're actually going to be publishing an impact report in the last 10 years. And one of the data points that we were able to find out through the collection and preparing for this report, that more than 75% of our own supply chain partners are actually of diverse businesses. So it's just, I think innovation fuels innovation. And when you have a wider range of perspectives, people will see problems differently. they're going to see the solutions differently. Again, I'm going to drive in the fact that we talk about how we want to be a solutions provider for our ultimate end user. Then that's why we need different perspectives. After all this, you're like, okay, enough about supplier diversity. How is it important to me? And why is it important to me? Do you want to sell to any of these companies? I mean, look at these companies. I've put some Canadian ones in here, RBC being Canada's largest bank, which is also a global bank, by the way. But, you know, if you want to do business with any of these corporations, what's really important is if you are a distributor or you are a supplier or service provider, that you get yourself certified. And why is certification important? It's because these organizations have invested in all the councils that I showed you earlier to validate. Validation and legitimacy is very, very, very important. They want to be able to audit. They want, so, you know, by getting certified, all of these companies, if you want to, you know, start building that supplier diversity strategy, is you need to have the right systems in place. And I would start building those systems where you can allow these companies to validate, to legitimize, to audit. And also, in some instances, especially in government, for example, there are compliance requirements. So I know we talk about compliance in terms of product safety compliance, but there's also compliance within the supplier diversity world as well. And then there's also transparency. You know, the heart of our business, we're really in fashion business. And I know we talk about transparency a lot. And I don't see that going away for this industry either. Promotional product industry, I think there's a real need and a real demand from your consumers to be transparent. So by being diverse certified, you know, you're also being transparent. And then also biggest part about supplier diversity and adopting that within your own supply chain is the socioeconomic value. You know, you saw in the video, by supporting diverse businesses, you're actually bringing employment and you're bringing prosperity to communities. You know, like one of the things that we want to talk about as well, like for my business, we talk about sustainability. I know that word gets thrown around a lot. I will be quite honest, I'm a little bit concerned that that word sustainability will be thrown around and be greenwashed like the word eco did. However, I think every individual, every business needs to define what sustainability means to him or her, or to the organization. And at Redwood Classic, sustainability is twofold. The first one is environmental impact, and the fact that we are making locally. We're made in North America. We're minimizing the carbon footprint. Over 60% of the fabric we consume at our factory level is actually knitted within 100 miles radius of us. So table stakes, environmental impact is table stakes. But another part of sustainability, which if you look at the titles of many of these Fortune 500 companies, they're actually adopting what used to be supplier diversity or within procurement is actually called sustainability now, and is rolled into sustainability because of the socioeconomic impact of how supplier diversity really can impact communities and uplift. There's also, like, as we had mentioned before, there's cost reductions, there's competitiveness, and there's really expanding your customer base. So these are all reasons why I think it's really important. So how does supplier diversity look in the promotional product industry? So I have here a little multi-tier system. So the corporations would be any of the ones that we have seen here. As you see, BMO Harris Bank, I use that as an example. And then a tier one would be the distributors that are directly invoicing and working directly with the corporations. And how can you fold in supplier diversity is, as an example, Redwood Classics, my company, we are a diverse certified business. So through this, you will see, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but if BMO Harris is really implementing the strategy of bringing diversity through their supply chain, they're actually going through the distributor as a tier one. So a tier one within procurement. And then through that is also a tier two. And I know this sounds kind of crazy and it's not the norm of what we do in this business, but one of the things that happens at least it happens quite often with us, is that we have corporations that want to work with us. But I'm very transparent and I say, you know what? that's not what we do. We do not sell direct. Instead, we're going to put you through one of our tier ones. And when you do that, the corporations are okay with it because they want to know that ultimately what ends up landing that they're using, that they're procuring, and that they're spending is still with a diverse supplier. So those that are familiar with supplier diversity, you may have heard in some incidences, you have corporations that are asking you for your spending. So tier one reporting, that's when, if you ever hear the term tier one reporting, that's really what it is. It's these corporations that are now saying, I want to know who you're buying from. And that's something that I'm not sure if our industry does very often. But if you're trying to sell to any of the Fortune 500s, and as supplier diversity gains traction, and again, with all the social injustices that's happened in 2020, that's really perhaps has always been, floating around, but now it's come to light. And you have the Gen Zs. The Gen Zs, they're the future, they're the buying power, and they're also, many of them are the gatekeepers. So they want to know. They want to know who you're procuring with. They want to know that you are using diverse businesses as well. So that's really, I just wanted to show how it would look like. So my supplier, for example, would be then a tier 3 within the structure of supplier diversity strategy of a corporation. Okay, so some of you may wonder, okay, how do I get started on supplier diversity? Again, very high level would be, we want you to assess your current spend. Conduct a maturity assessment of your company's as is situation. Look at your processes and policies and systems and people, and identify priority markets and existing pockets of good practices and bring it to scale. Also, perhaps develop a corporate supplier development plan. So what that means is, determine the tools and the enablers that are required to help you deliver diversity objectives, and determine and focus categories of sourcing to meet your diversity targets. So that's exactly what these corporations are doing, by the way. And then also establishing corporate policy and top corporate management support. I cannot even begin to express the importance of top down. If you are an owner, you're a CEO, you're a C-level that's watching this, if you don't believe in it, your corporations will tell. Your corporations will know, and it will not be successful, because at the C-level, you have the power to develop and ensure KPIs are tied to your diversity spend. So I think it's really, really important that you engage in a wider business leadership and other functions and get it to all align, because that would be just a baseline exercise, right? Because when you begin to understand the metrics, I think your RFP process through that can be improved to engage diverse suppliers. There's many, many more opportunities. Another, best practice would also be to develop and identify opportunities for diversity in your strategic sourcing. This is where business development comes in. Define the approach and initiate how do you embed supplier diversity within your procurement strategy, and perhaps define what your organization needs to develop and implement supplier diversity strategies and related programs. Also, establish comprehensive internal and external communication. I mean, especially in 2020 with us working from home, and just, if anything, it's communication. You cannot over communicate the importance of supplier diversity. If this is a route and a strategy and a business strategy you want to implement into your organization. I think it's really important that you have to market your message clearly, your intent, the reason why you want to do it, and not only to your current suppliers, but also to your stakeholders, your internal stakeholders, because what I've been told by a number of corporations, and within procurement or those that head diversity or D&I, is that if you're not genuine about it and it's not top down and you're just doing it to tick a box, it shows. It really, really shows. And you're just being disingenuous about it. And so I believe you need to over communicate. It has to come from top to bottom. And then also the most important part of all of this is, remember I said to you guys, it's important to be able to validate and to legitimize. You need to establish tracking and reporting and goal setting processes. This is very, very important. You need to analyze the data regarding all that has happened through supplier diversity, or else you're not going to be able to build that business case. You won't see the ROI that we're talking about. And then lastly, of course, like any other strategy, you need to develop a continuous improvement plan to analyze. So with that, I'm going to go into just saying, we talked about the business side of supplier diversity, and now I'm going to share more of a personal story in my supplier diversity journey. 6 years ago, I didn't even know what an elevator pitch was. Until I got inducted into the class of 2014, the EY Winning Women Entrepreneur of the Year, EY Winning Women Entrepreneur Program. And they were very generous because they recognized that I was a woman-owned business. So EY, which is Ernst & Young, invested in me because I won this award/development evergreen development program. And they sent me to my first WeBank conference. And it blew my mind. I didn't even think or believe that supplier diversity was a real thing. And they sent me to a summit in Salute, which is really like the smaller version of kind of the national. I guess it would be like a regional show for PPAI. But I realized, oh my gosh, like supplier diversity really is a real thing. And through that, I recognize, you know what, I'm going to get certified, not because I'm going to sell to IBM, not because I'm going to sell to Starbucks, not because I'm going to sell to Google, but because I recognize there's actually a number of amazing development programs. And the first one I got inducted with was the EY Winning Women. But through that, a lot of doors have opened up. I was the first international student to go to Tuck at Dartmouth for their Google Digital program, and that was supported through Google. GM, General Motors, actually invested in me because we won the Campsie Supplier of the Year. So we won a full scholarship to go to Tuck Business School at Dartmouth, and it was a week of executive training and helped me level up myself as a leader. And I didn't even consider myself as a leader. There was just so many programs out there that if you want to learn and you want to be better, they're there, and they're so generous. It's just incredible how generous the corporations are. I'm a graduate of Accenture's DSDP program, where they select maybe I think 10 to 12 suppliers, and they match us in an 18-month intensive program. And we're meeting with high level intelligence and have access to Accenture intelligence and mentors that are our own cheerleaders. They want us to succeed. I mean, I'm a graduate of that program. There's just been so much program and learning that I believe that through supplier diversity in my personal journey, I started to find my voice and I grew personally. And if you're an owner operator, I think you can relate. When you grow personally, you will also grow professionally. And so, I'm really, really grateful for supplier diversity. I believe it's beyond just dollars and cents. It can really have an impact. And it got me to realize that I don't want to just be in my business. I need to work on my business. So with that, as they say, Peter Dunker was the one to say the best way to predict the future is create it. And I believe if you're on this webinar, it's because you have a desire to create our future together. So again, I do believe that a diverse supply chain is the key, and the sustainability to the sustainability and the profitability of our industry. So with that, I will open it up for questions, Kathleen.
Great presentation, Kathy. Thank you. So we have a few questions that came in. The first one was near the beginning of your presentation. Is there any easy way to get certified as a woman-owned business, or do you need to go through the WBEC?
So if you go through WeBank is actually the national council. So within your region, you should have regional councils. But yes, I don't know what you would define as easy, because often people will say to me, oh my gosh, it's so much work to get certified. Think about it. It should be. It should be, because the Fortune 500s, all these major corporations are relying on these councils to validate your business, to say this is a real thing, to say that you really are a women-owned business. So they will ask for a lot. And I'll be honest, when I got my CAMC, which is the minority certification, I literally felt like I got my citizenship the second time, my Canadian citizenship the second time. I mean, I had to show my passport. I have to show all your legal documents as your corporation. We showed our board of directors. We show your financial. You have to show your tax returns. They need to validate you, because if these Fortune 500 and these businesses are making an effort and investing in trying to attract more diverse businesses, it's very important that they fully vet you out and you're fully validated. Is that to say people will cheat? I'm sure people will cheat. There's always a loophole. I don't know where it is, but I'm sure someone will always find something. I don't encourage it, but it's like anything else in life. As much as we try to be 100%, there may be. Again, I discourage it, but I think validation and that certification and going through that application process is very important.
Definitely. Thank you. Our next question, do you have to be an incorporated company, or can you be an LLC and recognized as a diverse supplier?
I believe this is more of a US based question. So I believe you can, but I'm not going to sit and say I know 100% that you can. I do believe you can, though. It has to be a for-profit business. Another certification or type of business that not all, but many corporations will also recognize is your SBE. So your small business, I think in the US, I've lost it, but it's as a small business. I think if you get that certification through something through your financials or through your banking, that they will also accept that certification. Not all, you have to check with the corporation.
Okay. Our next question is from a gentleman. He asks, my company is an ESOP where the majority of employees are women. Would this be considered a minority-owned business?
Do the majority of women own more than 51% of your business? And are they able to sign checks? And do they have signing authority? Like, that's really what it is. It comes down to ownership, not necessarily your employee. So remember, it's not only just the ownership, you have to be active in the business. You have to be active in the business. You have to be managing the business. And that's why, there are some certification boards or some of the councils that actually send people or certifying or an auditor to come to your organization. I've actually had that. My first audit and our first application, we actually had someone come meet with us, come to the factory. Not only were they going through all the documents, but they were legitimizing us and validating that all that we claim on paper is really legit.
Fair enough. Our next question, a gentleman asked, do you come out and ask your customers if they participate in diversity and inclusion programs? And if not, then why not?
Do I?
Why or why not?
Sorry, if you could just so I can understand the question, do I ask my customers if they engage in it? Is that really the question?
I think it's more of a generalized question. Should you come out and ask your customers if they participate in diversity and inclusion programs?
So I'm just going to remind you again, the audience, diversity and inclusion is really an internal program. So if you ask them that, you're really asking them, okay, is diversity important within your organization, and not necessarily if you're trying to sell to them as a service provider or a product provider as a supplier. So supplier diversity is really what, you would or could ask about. Whether or not you think it's a good idea, I think everyone has different business models and have different business development strategies. I don't know if you would be comfortable, but I often suggest distributors go on their website. just simply go on their website, or if you go on any of the NMSDC, like there was that slide. Let me find that slide again. If you recall this slide, all of these slides, if you go on these on their website, often they're going to list who their corporate members are. The board of directors are often corporations as well, because these corporations are the ones that are investing for the reason for these guys to exist. These councils exist because of corporations. So a lot of it is funded by corporations. I mean, the sponsorship and the amount of money they spend on trade shows, like, you know, the $1 Billion Club, they're spending a lot of money with members within these certifying councils. I hope I answered the question.
Great, thank you. And then the last question we have here, what recommendations do you have for setting strategy to approach companies with supplier diversity programs?
In terms of from a sales perspective, or if you can give me some context of whoever's asking that question, if I could get some context of that question.
They say, as a distributor seeking new clients.
Mm-hmm. As a distributor seeking new clients, sorry, if you could just finish off that question for me. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it.
As a distributor seeking new clients, what recommendations do you have for setting strategy to approach companies who have supplier diversity programs?
First and foremost, get engaged. Do your research. See what councils they support. And then also really maybe ask them, like, do you need target spends or within your category? Because, you know, like in procurement, we have hard goods and soft goods, right? In our promo industry, they also have what they call direct and indirect spends. So let's say GM, a direct spend would be with Goodyear. Or Michelin, you know, tires, there's products that are directly going into the product of a car, of an automotive. So that's what they would call a direct spend. Typically in the promo industry, we're considered an indirect spend. So on the indirect spend, they usually have budgets or they have targets that they want to hit as well. So perhaps ask them, how is your target? You know, how are you doing in your targets with that? And again, it goes back to whether or not you're comfortable and how close you are with your relationship and who you know within your organization that you can ask these questions. But again, I always think, like, in my humble opinion, going on websites, it's just like any other business transaction. You got to do your homework, right? In business development. So you know what's best for you. And I would say their website is really a great way to look at it. And then again, going to the councils, because you can see how involved they are. If you see that they're a sponsor or they're a title sponsor or something, well, that's going to tell you that supplier diversity is important to them. That's why they're a title sponsor, right? I don't know if that does that answer the question, Kathleen? I don't know, whoever's. Does that help?
I definitely think so. Getting engaged, yeah. Okay. I don't have any other questions coming through, so I think at this time we'll conclude our session. Kathy, I want to offer a special thank you to you for sharing your expertise and ideas today.
Thank you.
For everyone attending this session, it is now time to complete the online education survey for this webinar. For those of you on our live session, you will see it pop up at the end of this session. For those of you on our on-demand session, please return to the webinar launch page and then select the Online Education Survey for Credit button. Once you complete the survey, it will apply education credit for today's webinar to your transcript. Please note that our handouts are available on that same session launch page in the Handouts and Resources tab. If you have colleagues that were unable to attend today's live session, please let them know that it will be available for on-demand viewing through our online education platform. Today's webinar is copyrighted and all rights reserved by Promotional Products Association International. This concludes today's webinar. We hope that you join us for our next webinar, and thank you for your participation.
Thank you, everyone, for having me, and thank you, PPAI, for this opportunity to further educate and propel our industry forward.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.